I will tell you, because that was my first day on the job, that 9/11 was taken very hard by the workforce, that we had failed the country. We had failed to keep Americans out of harm's way. However, that was not the case with much of the leadership. The leadership was really in denial. I would hear the following phrase, which I think one person in particular probably had regrets ever saying more publicly, that 9/11 was a gift to NSA. A gift. It was really an interesting bifurcation. A very secret organization knowing that we were part of a systemic failure called 9/11. I will also tell you 9/11 could have been prevented. One of the things that's not well publicly known is that part of my whistleblowing involved being called as a material witness in the short months after 9/11 for 2 9/11 congressional investigations in which I gave highly classified information, operational intelligence, information that NSA had never shared, or information it did not know it had that was never shared, that if it had been shared and properly acted upon, probably would have stopped 9/11 alone, separate from any other intelligence agency or department.
This video is going to surround the NSA and CIA pre-intelligence to September 11, 2001. Intelligence that goes back to the early 1990s. And it has not been revealed when U.S. intelligence began monitoring bin Laden exactly, though the CIA was tailing him in the Sudan by the end of 1991. But in late 1995, the FBI is given 46 files on bin Laden from the CIA and NSA, mostly communications intercepts. The sheer amount of material suggests that the surveillance had been going on for several years. Dan Coleman, an FBI agent working out of the I-49 unit, counterterrorism unit in New York, will begin examining these files and find that many of them are transcripts from wiretapped phones tied to bin Laden's businesses in Khartoum, Sudan, where bin Laden lived between the years of 1991 and 1996. Later, CIA Director George Tenet will later comment that the then obscure name of Osama Bin Laden kept cropping up in the intelligence traffic. The CIA spotted bin Laden's tracks in the early 1990s in connection with funding other terrorist movements. They didn't know exactly what this Saudi exile living in Sudan was up to, but they knew it was not good. The London Times will later report that in the Sudan, bin Laden used a $80,000 satellite phone, and al-Qaeda members used radios to avoid being bugged. Bin Laden is often mistaken in his belief that satellite phones cannot be monitored, in which a satellite phone that he bought in 1996 will be monitored as well due to it being unencrypted. Now, in between February of 91 to July of 1992, the CIA was monitoring bin Laden into Khartoum, like I said before, where he had moved. Billy Waugh, an independent contractor working for the CIA, moves to Khartoum and is given the task of spying on him. Waugh is actually a legendary fighter already in his 60s who has performed many special operations for the United States Army and the CIA, including the capture of one notable terrorist, Carlos the Jackal, in which him and Kofor Black had helped to capture in Africa. The Associated Press will later report that Waugh played a typecast role as an aging American fitness enthusiast and would regularly jog past bin Laden's home. He said he often came face to face with bin Laden, who undoubtedly knew the CIA was tailing him. Neither said anything, but Waugh recalled exchanging pleasantries with bin Laden's Afghan guards. Waugh will later recall, I was on a tracking team in the Sudan, keeping track of bin Laden in his early days as a possible terrorist network leader. The CIA chief of station there told me upon arrival that he was one of our targets, that he was a wealthy Saudi financier and possibly supporter of the terrorist outfit called al-Qaeda. He also ran companies there and even owned an entire street block in the Al Riyadh section of the city. At the time of our surveillance operations against him in 1991, he was not a particularly high priority, though evidence was gathering about him. At the time, it would have been very easy to take him out. Waugh also claims that when he saw bin Laden in the mountains of the Pakistan-Afghan border in the late 1980s, when he was training the Mujahideen resistance. During 1993, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, who have the longest records of being involved with al-Qaeda, have been known to the CIA. In fact, CIA Director George Tenet called them al-Qaeda veterans. And according to the CIA, al-Hazmi first travels to Afghanistan in 1993 as a teenager, then fights in Bosnia with al-Hazmi in 1995. Al-Mihdhar makes his first visit to Afghanistan training camps in 1996 and then fights in Chechnya in 1997. They both swore loyalty or bayat to bin Laden around 1998. Al-Hazmi fights in Afghanistan against the Northern Alliance with his brother Salem al-Hazmi, and he fights in Chechnya in around 1998. He then returns to Saudi Arabia in early 99, where he shares information about the 1998 U.S. Embassy bombings. However, it is not clear what information he disclosed to whom or where he obtained this information. But the CIA definitely knows that they have some involvement in the embassy bombings at around that time. It is possible that some or all the information came from the NSA, which is intercepting some of Nawaf al-Hazmi's phone calls at around that same time in early of 1999 and maybe even early 1998. In November of 96, bin Laden uses a satellite phone to direct al-Qaeda operations. The phone, which is a compact M satellite phone about the size of a laptop computer, was purchased by a student in Virginia named Ziad Khalil for $7,500 using the credit card of a British man named Saad al-Faghi. After purchasing the phone, Khalid sent it to Khalid al-Fawaz, an al-Qaeda unofficial press secretary in London. Al-Fawaz then shipped it to bin Laden in Tora Bora, Afghanistan. It appeared the U.S. intelligence actually tracks the purchase as it occurs, and that's because the FBI was running a separate investigation into Khalid al-Fawaz and Ziad Khalil for their connections to Hamas inside the United States. Due to the phone being unencrypted, the FBI contacted the NSA and began monitoring the phone from its use in Tora Bora, Afghanistan. Bin Laden's number, 873-682-505-331, is believed to be used by other top al-Qaeda leaders as well, including Ayman al-Swahari from the Egyptian Islamic Jihad and the military commander for al-Qaeda, Mohammed Aitef. Al-Fawaz also buys satellite phones for other top al-Qaeda leaders around the same time. Though the calls made on those phones are encrypted, the NSA is able to intercept and decrypt only bin Laden's satellite phone. As one U.S. official will put it in early 2001, codes were broken. Literally, a landmine of information from the NSA began in early of 1992 to 1998 when bin Laden stopped using the phone. Though the calls made on these phones are encrypted, the NSA is able to intercept and decrypt them and basically hear everything incoming and outgoing regarding this phone. Bin Laden's satellite phone replaces an older model he uses in the Sudan that apparently was also monitored by the NSA. As I said before, in 1992, billing records for his new phone are eventually released to the media in early of 2002, and later Newsweek will note a country-by-country analysis of the bills provided U.S. authorities with a virtual roadmap to important al-Qaeda cells around the world, including Britain, where 27 different phone numbers are called in Britain. The accounts differ on the exact number of calls, but Khalid al-Fawaz, who helps publish statements by bin Laden, received 143 of those calls. Yemen, 221 calls. Dozens of those calls go to an al-Qaeda communications hub in the capital of Sana'a, which is run by Ahmed al-Hada. It later become an al-Qaeda communications hub in which the NSA also begins to run a tap on that line. The Sudan, 131 calls originated from the Sudan. 106 calls to Iran, 67 calls to Azerbaijan, and at least 56 calls to Kenya, 6 calls inside the United States. Press reports note that the records indicated 0 calls were made to Iraq, and over 1,100 total calls are made on the phone. Adding up to the above numbers means that the destination of over 100 calls is still unaccounted for. The use of this phone stops 2 months after the August 1998 embassy bombings in Tanzania and Dar es Salaam. However, It appears that bin Laden and other al-Qaeda leaders continued to other satellite phones occasionally after this time. Shortly after the September 11th attacks, James Banford, an expert authority on the agency of the NSA, says about a year or so ago, the NSA lost all track of him. He may still use satellite phones occasionally to talk about something mundane, but he discovered that the transmitters can be used for homing. According to a different account, bin Laden will attempt to use the different phone communications method, but U.S. intelligence was soon discovered and continue monitoring his calls. In early of 1999, the NSA continued to monitor the al-Qaeda communications hub in Sana'a, Yemen, run by hijacker Khalid al-Midar's father-in-law, since he married his daughter Doa al-Hada. They find references to al-Midar and the hijacker's brothers Salim and Nawaf al-Hazmi. They also learned that Khalid al-Midar and Nawaf al-Hazmi are longtime friends. In early of 1999, the NSA intercepted communications mentioning the full name Nawaf al-Hazmi. However, this information is not disseminated to the intelligence community, as it apparently does not meet NSA reporting thresholds. The 9/11 congressional inquiry will later say those thresholds vary depending on the judgment of the NSA analyst who is reviewing the intercept and the subject, location, and content of the intercept. Another intelligence organization intercepts the same or similar calls and reports this to the NSA. The inquiry later commented that the NSA's practice was to review such reports and disseminate those responsive to U.S. intelligence requirements. For an undetermined reason, the NSA did not disseminate the report. The NSA continues to intercept such calls and finds more information a few months later. Near the end of 1999, there will be additional intercepts that give Khalid al-Midar's full name and the first names of the other two, of Nawaf al-Hazmi and his brother Salim al-Hazmi. While the NSA will provide some information about these new intercepts to the NSA and other agencies, they will not go back to the earlier intercepts to figure out Nawaf's full name and close connection to al-Midar. The NSA had not shared this information to the CIA, even though it was the CIA who had informed the NSA about the locations of some of these phone calls. Just days after finding out al-Hazmi and al-Midar's names, a series of calls are made on December 29, 1999, which is heard by the NSA. However, there is a CIA analyst that is known to Michael Scheuer of the CIA. He reports back and learns that the NSA have begun monitoring phone calls out of Sana'a, Yemen. The CIA wants them in on the action. He then goes to the deputy director of the NSA, Barbara McNamara, and gets into a long conversation and later an argument about the CIA becoming privy to the cables collected by the NSA, in which the CIA begins a listening device off the coast of Madagascar. They also begin bugging inside the house of the Ahmed al-Hada home and then become the primary agency involved with the monitoring of Sana'a, Yemen. However, the calls that were heard on December 29, 1999 from the NSA would reveal that several men were to attend a very high-level meeting with notable high-ranking al-Qaeda leaders from around the world. Khalid al-Midar, Nawaf al-Hazmi, and Salim al-Hazmi are to attend this meeting, which is held in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. The information would be shared with the CIA's Alex station and its counterterrorism unit. The FBI's I-49 unit, as well as the regional New York City field office, are also informed about the revelation uncovered by the NSA. The reason enough for sharing this information was simple. The NSA wanted these agencies to photograph and collect as much data as possible about who these men were and looked like, so that they could be shared with the NSA. Although Khalid al-Midar's full name was mentioned in one call, the NSA only passes on its first name to the CIA. The al-Qaeda meeting would be fully monitored by Malaysian authorities on behalf of the CIA. The meeting was held in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia between January 5th and January 8th of 2000. Yazid Sufat would hold the meeting in his condominium, which he is also a member of Jemaah Islamiyah, a terrorist cell located in Malaysia. The meeting would hold many luminaries of the Islamic terrorism world, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Ridwan Isamuddin, who goes by the name Hambali, and a co-leader of the Jemaah Islamiyah, Nawaf al-Hazmi, Khalid al-Minar, Salim al-Hazmi, Ramzi bin al-Shib, Tawfiq bin Atash, nicknamed Khalad, Abu Bara al-Tazizi, Abu Rahim al-Nashiri, and Fahad al-Kuso. It is also alleged that Zacharias Musawi has also attended this meeting. The Malaysian Secret Service would monitor the location of this meeting by taking a number of photographs of the men coming in and out of the residence at the request of the CIA. They asked the Malaysian Secret Service to then pass the information on to its embassy in the United States. The CIA would be the only agency to have photographs of the men attending the meeting. They would not be initially shared with the FBI or to the NSA, who ordered or demanded photographs of the meeting. It wasn't until hours after the attacks in New York City where the CIA showed a photograph of Khalad to FBI agent Ali Soufan, who gave his name as well. But by then, it was much too late. The information to stop many of these terrorist attacks would also come into question from the Joint House inquiry into the 9/11 attacks, in which Carl Levin, a committee member, would berate CIA Director George Tenet for not sharing the information with the FBI regarding Nawaf al-Hazmi's dual entry visa, as well as Khalid al-Mihdhar, to which Tenet had denied not sharing information, but didn't think the information Alex Station had was properly vetted. Tenet, unknown to the joint inquiry, would commit perjury regarding that no one had read the cable about Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi having dual U.S. visas, and the FBI assigned to the Alex Station disagrees. Doug Miller, also an FBI officer assigned to Alex Station, had read the cable regarding Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi's passport and U.S. visa. Miller drafted a cable warning the FBI headquarters about both men now available to enter the United States, that they both were al-Qaeda operatives who were also involved with the U.S. Embassy attacks in 1998. The cable was intercepted by Alex Station liaison officer Michelle Ann Casey, who go to Tom Wilshire, the deputy director of Alex Station. He would inform Casey to put a hold on sending. When Mark Rossini saw the cable was on hold, he went straight to Casey and asked why the cable had not been sent. Rossini would later tell Frontline PBS, this was not a matter for the FBI, he was told. The next al-Qaeda attack is going to happen in Southeast Asia, and their visas for America are just a diversion. You are not to tell the FBI about it. When and if we want the FBI to know about it, we will. Both Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi entered the United States after their meeting in Malaysia on January 15, 2001. However, the NSA continued to monitor the calls of both men, even intercepting the calls while they were in Malaysia before they left for the al-Qaeda summit meeting, and even while they were making calls inside the United States using a cell phone belonging to a Saudi consular officer named Omar al-Bayoumi. The CIA had followed al-Mihdhar when he left his home in Yemen and managed to break into his hotel suite where he was staying and photograph his passport, which gave them his full name, his birth information, and passport number for the first time, which alerted them that he had an entry visa to the United States. The CIA officers left the room, leaving everything in the condition they found it in, and they immediately sent this information to Alex Station. The NSA had managed to locate the phone of Khalid al-Mihdhar while in Bangkok, Thailand on January 8th of 2000. This information was also never shared with the agency, either the FBI or the CIA. Again, it seemed that the NSA had always been in constant contact with members of the Yemen hub and also Osama Bin Laden, while the CIA was just a mere steps behind and the FBI being totally kept in the dark. While 9/11 Commissioner Philip Zelikow states that the NSA would not have the technological capabilities to decipher the calls made out of the Yemen hub, intelligence historian Matthew Aid states that that is far from the case. In an interview with ProPublica in 2013, Aid said this: back in 2001, NSA was routinely tracking the identities of both sides of a telephone call. However, what the NSA had known since 1992 was far more sensational, massive in its totality, and rather damning to the agency. The metadata collected by the NSA, the thousands of phone calls monitored by the Bin Laden satellite phone to the Yemen hub, it was absolutely enormous. The absence of sharing this remarkably important data with anyone outside the agency could be seen as critical negligence. And it also could be seen as being culpable of complicity to a high degree. According to former senior executive Thomas Drake, in his interview with Barbara Kopel of The Nation in 2013, Barbara Kopel, what did you tell the Saxby-Chambliss Congressional Subcommittee and the Congressional Joint Inquiry? Thomas Drake, I can't say fully because it's classified, but I showed that the NSA knew a great deal about the 9/11 threats and al-Qaeda electronically tracking various people and organizations for years since its rose to collect intelligence. The problem is it wasn't sharing all of the data. If it had, other parts of government could have acted on it, and more than likely, NSA could have stopped. I say stopped 9/11. Later, it could have located Al Qaeda at the very time the US was scouring Afghanistan. It's true that there were systematic failures throughout the intelligence system, but NSA was a critical piece of it. I gave both committees prima facie evidence with documents. One was an early 2001 NSA internal detailed multi-year study of Al Qaeda and sympathetic groups, movements that revealed what NSA knew, could have done, and should have done. It was astonishingly well analyzed current intelligence. Soon after 9/11, some NSA analysts called me about it. Why? Because they were pulling their hair out, knowing they had this information and they couldn't get NSA leadership to share the report with the rest of the intelligence community, even though it's mandatory. It was actionable information. Remember the time period. We were in the early part of the war in Afghanistan. People needed to act on it to unravel Al Qaeda networks, but NSA leaders deliberately decided not to disseminate it. So the analysis about what it knew before and after 9/11 got buried very deeply because it would have really made them look bad. In fact, after the analysts called me to complain, I told my superior, Maureen Baginski, the director of signals intelligence, who was the number 3 person at NSA. But instead of acting on it, she got mad at me. She said, Tom, I wish you never brought this to my attention. Barbara Kopel, why? Thomas Drake, because she no longer had plausible deniability. The obvious question is, how much did the National Security Agency uncover since 1992? Between the years 1992 to 1998, they were monitoring Osama Bin Laden's satellite phone. They began monitoring all calls out of the Yemen hub from 1996 to 2001. How much did the NSA know and didn't share? Unless the public has access to that transcribed data, we will be left to our own imagination.